Could the budget have inadvertently kicked the legs from under the high-spec office market? I'm David Tame, analysis editor at Place North. In today's Place podcast, we'll ask, did Rachel Reeves' first Labour budget inadvertently upend the swanky, well-being-focused office scene? Maybe so, if you think Labour's massive tax hike is going to cause serious damage to the labour market. We'll also watch the slow-moving co-living scene creep forward in Leeds and ask whether a change of development partner makes much difference at Salford's MediaCity. Life is one long lesson in unintended consequences, politics and economics even more so. One of them could be that the newly reinvented post-Brexit, post-COVID office market has just had the rug pulled from under it. And that would be by the rise of national insurance contributions from employers and a Labour budget which, says the independent watchdog, isn't going to produce any economic growth in the next 5 years. If you've 10 minutes to spare, try this argument out for size. You may be hearing a lot more of it fairly soon. So where does the office market in the north start? The answer is in a fairly good place if you squint. CoStar data released this week tells the tale. UK office take-up in the third quarter of 2024 was up 25% on a year-on-year basis as business confidence grows, and up 15% on the second quarter. Manchester, a monster office market, did particularly well, recording its largest office letting in a decade as the Bank of New York Mellon took 199,000 square feet at 4 Angel Square. This deal propelled Manchester's office take-up to a 7-year high and meant it was 61% higher in the third quarter than it was in the second. Prime rents are up too. Just last week, Place Northwest reported that CB Tax had signed up for 5,400 square feet on the 13th floor at number 1 Spinningfield in Manchester, paying £42.50 a square foot in a deal with Schroders Capital. This is just a shade below the £44 a square foot S&P Global will pay at number 1 St Michael's, both pretty hefty figures. Better still, the good office market news stretches well beyond Manchester. BNP Paribas Real Estate reported just earlier this week that office market activity surged in most of the big 10 UK office markets. Leeds' third quarter figure was 146,000 square feet, up on the 5-year average, and rents held steady at £39 a square foot. Sheffield saw the third quarter up 25%, but that's a complicated market, so judgment should be a bit cautious. Liverpool and Newcastle were the exceptions, I'm afraid. In Liverpool, take-up was down 16% on this time last year and down 38% on the 10-year average. Some work to do there, I think. Newcastle was down too, but here a lack of Grade A floor space seems genuinely to be the problem, not just an agent's excuse. Now, this narrative is playing out in real time. The narrative that good quality, modern, well-being focused floor space does particularly well. And this has been revealed in plans that Parthena Rays revealed last week for the 350,000 square foot former NatWest office in Manchester's Spinningfield. One Hardman Boulevard will have a roof terrace and lots of little jutting out spaces over a big central atrium. It'll set a new standard for the city, the hopeful owners say. Now, all this happy news comes with some caveats. And again, CoStar have the data. Despite the big jump in the third quarter, national office take-up was still 13% below the pre-pandemic 5-year average. And this is a figure no quarter has hit since the pandemic began, so we're 5 years out from good regular figures. Meanwhile, net absorption, which is a much more accurate measure of demand because it takes into account the space being vacated as well as the new space being occupied, has stayed deeply negative. Net absorption is deeply negative, and it got worse in the last 2 quarters. Meanwhile, the vacancy rate is 8.5% and rising. This is its highest since 2013. So, what's our conclusion? Well, the conclusion is the office market is okay in parts. So let's rewind and see how we got here, how the good parts got to be good. The background is this. Pandemic chatter about a new normal in which offices were downgraded or smaller or would be out of town turned out to be overblown. Instead, having spent 2 years locked up watching lifestyle programs on TV and binging on Instagram, employees and bosses alike wanted to go back to work, albeit only 3 days a week, and they wanted cool, well-being havens, not white-collar factories. No nasty bugs, no nasty coffee. Thus, offices as we knew them died, and the modern workplace was born. Now, behind this, in turn, was a labour shortage. Recruiting the right people got harder for many UK businesses, partly because employers got picky, but mostly because there were plenty of jobs to go around. Brexit and various social trends did some of the damage here, but about a fifth of the workforce dropped out of economic activity, and the pandemic shares a lot of the blame for that. Thus, the people who were yesterday's workaday staff became tomorrow's precious talent, and famously the war for talent was everything. If giving them handsome non-wage benefits like nice offices and flexible working was the price businesses had to pay to grab their talent, so be it. The corporate world also bought heavily into ESG and sustainability targets. How deeply is a moot point, but it provided a pull factor into smarter office buildings, at the same time as the shortage of talent provided a push factor. Result: demand for offices as hotels, fancy, well-being focused, pot plant strewn offices grew sharply. All of which raises the question, what happens if the labour market changes? Is there evidence that the labour market is changing? Well, yes, there is. Whilst the Office for National Statistics Labour Market Survey has rather a poor reputation as a statistical tool, nonetheless, it shows stability. But the more reliable wage data shows a consistent pattern, which is wage growth is slowing. That suggests the labour market is substantially less hot. Over the summer, wage growth dipped and average total earnings dipped even more. Income data research said in real terms, that's adjusted for inflation, earnings growth remains weak and also slowed. Real terms, regular pay growth stands at 1.9%, down from 2.2% last month, and real terms total pay growth fell to 0.9%, they said. The Institute for Fiscal Studies agrees. Its recent analysis talks of excess labour demand that was present throughout 22 and 23 and which is now being eliminated. The labour market is loosening, they say, and unemployment will begin to rise from 4.9% next year to 5.3% in 2026. In other words, the red-hot war for talent is largely over. The result is slower wage growth and a dent in consumer confidence. And this is where the hike in employers' national insurance contributions joins the party as one among a constellation of labour market pressures. In the background, we've got a load of other threats. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' budget makes it more likely that UK interest rates will stay higher for longer. Rates will also come down slowly, if at all, in the US, where a re-elected President Trump's fondness for tariffs and for borrowing is likely to stoke inflation. Lower real terms income, slowing wage growth, rising unemployment, higher taxes. None of this is likely to make employees feel fancy-free and footloose. If trading in the pot plants and nice office furniture keeps their wages up, they'll probably take it. And will the bosses make that offer? Well, until now, the bosses' calculation has been that it's worth pressing on with non-wage elements of employment, so fancy offices and flexible working and so on. But what if their priority is actually, just like their staff's, keeping the wages up? To keep wages up, employers will have to swallow the cost of the national insurance contribution hike. And why not, in those circumstances, cut out the fancy offices? If both sides make this calculation, then the office market's post-pandemic reprieve could get a seasonal chill. As winter deepens, we will find out. And now your regular rundown of what's going up and what is heading the other way in the Place North elevator. Doors closing, going down. It's probably water off a dog's back for Peel, but reading the below-the-line comments on Place North, you could begin to think they weren't a very popular developer. The gist of the complaint is the slow pace of progress on some of their sites. So good news for Peel, which may have bought itself some popularity by bailing out of the 52-acre MediaCity development in Salford Quays, selling its remaining 25% stake to Landsec for $83 million. Remember, they sold the other 75% in 2021. Hopes are high that the consolidated ownership will mean the brakes are off and MediaCity swiftly turns into something more dynamic. Around 800,000 square feet of commercial floor space is on the cards one day. Whether Landsec is in practice keener on risking an enormous out-of-town office development than Peel is something we'll all be watching for. The slow-moving, co-living bandwagon has moved on, this time trundling through Leeds. Watkins Jones is looking to convert the former Direct Line offices at Hedgerow House. They will pay £2.45 million in lieu of on-site provision of affordable homes for the pleasure of doing so. The office space will be converted into 230 co-living studios on the basis of designs by Swap Architects. It follows similar Watkins Jones projects in the southwest. The 10-storey building has been empty for 3 years, so development is more than welcome. As has become traditional in the world of co-living, planners pressed for bigger units. Watkins Jones, taking the worldly realist view of these things, agreed. Studios will now be 307 square feet each. There may be powerful economic arguments for this kind of graduate retention floor space, but planners remain cautious. Although the British Property Federation repeated its call for the government to offer firmer guidance by including co-living in the revised National Planning Policy Framework, Subplot could find no words in the consultation draft to bring them comfort. Officials are currently reconsidering the draft NPPF, and an outcome is expected before the year end. So that's it for today. We've pondered the risk that the Chancellor's efforts to right the economy may inadvertently sink the high-end office market. We've watched co-living in Leeds make a juddering ascent from the basement to the lower floors. Will it get any higher? And we've asked if Peel offloading the final slice of Salford's MediaCity is raising unfounded hopes that the pace of progress will pick up. For more about the built environment in the north, visit placenorth.co.uk. I'm David Tame, and thank you for listening.